Okay. Yeah, and thank you everyone for coming to the very first Twitter space hosted by Next.ID as part of our DID summer serial events to better understand the impact and technical nature of decentralized identifiers, identities, and explore how identities will play their roles in building Web3 apps and protocols and their impact to end users. A lot of them are with us today. I'm your host today, Hannah. I lead growth at Next.ID. We're an open source decentralized identity protocol aggregating all self-governed digital identities. So NextID offers decentralized identity as a service, what we call DS, to empower other DID protocols, social graph protocols, as well as developers of Web3 apps to build a more robust and comprehensive identity infrastructure. And so, as to kick off our very first Twitter space, I'm super excited to have our fellow builder friends in the identity and social space for a deep dive on what it is, what's DID, and what it means to be human in Web3 era. And I think also we're hosting this Twitter space at a good timing because today, W3C made an official recommendation on a core architecture, data model, and representations of decentralized identifiers as their kind of latest recommendation on what DID is. And so there are a lot of latest updates and revelations coming from that, and I'm really excited to chat more on that front with our speakers today. We're also hosting this as we're seeing a growing awareness that decentralized identities are needed for Web3 developers, projects, and most importantly, users. So I'll quickly introduce our speakers today and have them give a more detailed intro about themselves and their projects. So with us today, we have Thomas Yu, who is the founder of KNN3. And we have Vicky from the director of global market at .bit. We have James Young, from the founder and CEO of Collab.land. Iris, the head of business development and strategy from Unipass. And and Lauren is here, and we have Lauren, the head of growth at Ceramic. And last but not least, we have Yisi Liu, the co-founder and CTO of Mass Network, and also the initiator of Next.ID. Who I work with every day. So yeah, it's super great to have all of you here. Yeah, good morning, afternoon, and good evening. So maybe we can start with Thomas from KNN3 to give a more detailed intro about your project and yourself. Looks like, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you are
we
super
do.
clear.
Okay, awesome. So it looks like, wait, where's Thomas? We just lost Thomas. And then I guess next, maybe James, you can start first.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is James Young. We help run Collab.land. For those that don't know what Collab.land is, we are a token verifying or gating service on Telegram and Discord. And we power over 40,000 tokenized communities. In brief, you can think of Collab.land, the bot on Telegram and Discord, as like a nightclub bouncer. And it makes sure that the chat, these nightclubs that you're in, that you are actually holding or have the asset or the token, whether it's a fungible token or an NFT. And if you were to move that asset out of your wallet, you get kicked out of the group. So we ensure that those that are in these tokenized communities and in these chat channels are verified, and you're making sure that everyone else that's in that chat channel are verified token holders. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here, James. Thank you for waking up super early at your time zone.
Mm-hmm. Happy to be here.
All right, and then next up, we have Lauren from Ceramic.
Hey everyone, good morning from New York. My name's Lauren, really excited to be here and to chat about all things decentralized identity today. I'm the head of growth at 3Box Lab, which is the core team behind Ceramic Network. Ceramic is basically building, the easiest way to explain it is kind of like a decentralized database alternative. So if you think about all these different applications, such as Collab.land and others that are building decentralized apps, Ceramic basically aims to fit into the stack as the data layer to support a bunch of specifically user-related data and social data, and all data that's stored on Ceramic. And the reason that we're in this conversation is because all data is user-controlled on Ceramic and controlled by decentralized identifiers. So you can't actually write to a Ceramic stream or update any data on Ceramic unless it's controlled by a decentralized identifier and controlled by the user itself with explicit permissions. So excited to talk more about some of the use cases and what we see happening in the decentralized identity space.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Excited to have you here. And yeah, like definitely excited to chat about like the existing use cases we've seen regarding DIDs. Yeah, next up, we have Vicky from .bit.
Hi, I'm Vicky from .bit team. Thank you for having me here. I'm currently responsible for the .bit global market. And so let me introduce .bit a little bit. .bit is a unified cross-chain identity for users and communities, and it can provide quite a lot of things. It can be regarded as your decentralized identity in the Web3 scenarios, a DID NFT, a self-sovereign data container, a decentralized personal homepage, or a link to all of your Web2 and Web3 social graph. Sorry, can you hear me?
I think you got cut off for like 3 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, maybe my connection is not stable.
Yeah, all good. I think I heard you after kind of the brief intro about .bit. Yeah. Cool. And also like really excited to have .bit as one of the alpha test partners with NextID. And we have Winting from KNN3 or Thomas. Yeah. Can you hear us now?
Hey guys, if you guys can hear me, this is Thomas Yu from KN3 Network. So KN3 is a Web3 relationship aggregator on multi-blockchains, and we consolidate the social relationships from Web2 to Web3, and also we subjectively plot hidden relationships, like, for example, the co-owning of same collection of NFT and the POAP credentials co-owners. And we make it as a permissionless graph through SQL and SDKs. And in future, we want to use the network as the that user can access to it, but also everyone can create their own type of relationships according to users' real on-chain user behaviors. So it is a curation system that we can collectively building up on blockchain with the interoperability across the application and the protocols. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the intro, Winting, on KN3. Yeah, and next up we have Iris from Unipass.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having Unipass and me here today. I'm Iris. Though I'm quite new to the team, there are so many things I'm excited to absorb and learn. And now, Team Unipass, we are providing a user-friendly, non-custodial, multi-chain supported smart contract account to build up the DID ecosystem with a better user experience. And we are devoted to making the Web3 more accessible to Web2 users. Also, I'm happy to share some good news. Our team has just finished our seed round with a couple prestigious investors. And please pardon me if I say something stupid today, as I'm having a fever since yesterday, and my supposed to be centralized brain is definitely decentralized now. And I bet we'll have a great time tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Iris. And I think, Yeah, I'm sure you won't say something stupid. So, yeah. All right, and last but not least, Yisi from NextID.
Alrighty. So yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm not sure if my internet connection is good enough, but
You good?
we'll
You good?
try. We'll see. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm Yisi, and then I'm the co-founder CTO at Mass Network, and also like the initiator of this new project, called NextID. And then, for those don't really know about like Mass Network and NextID, well, they're two separate things, but I'll just focus on the NextID then. So NextID is focusing on like identity aggregators in a permissionless way. We want to like allow users to connect their both Web2 and the Web3 identities all together with only like proofs, and then that can be publicly verified, so that nobody needs to trust any like third party for trusting. So hey, this is someone and not someone else. So we are trying to bring this like service in a much easier way for especially for the developers, so that they can build like applications directly upon those identity aggregation data sets without like worrying about like how to win trust or win credit onto those like data points. So yeah, I mean, we will definitely just talk about more about what we are doing and what we care about later in this space. So thanks for having me here, and yeah.
Amazing. All right, great to have this amazing panel of speakers. And to get started with the discussion, I know like all of us have been working on like DIDs or like social related projects for a while, but for some of the listeners that tune in for the first time, could we start a discussion with talking about why we need DIDs and what are some of the existing flaws that you see in existing kind of Web2 identity system, and how that's like currently like impacting the users. Any speaker wants to start first?
Well, maybe I can talk a little bit.
Mhm.
I think it's two different kinds of identity we're talking about here, right? So when we're saying Web2 identity, we're referring to our accounts on different centralized social medias, while real world digital identities is a more far complicated thing. From my perspective, the idea is more like a national digital legal identity we're talking about, like such as a digital SSV or national identity number. So to me, like or dislike is probably not appropriate word to use to conclude my attitude towards Web2 or real world digital identity. They definitely play important roles in a person's daily life. We're born with a certificate or and then register as a legal citizen in a nation. It is the first identity document we hold as a person. And online surfing is already rooted in everyone's daily routine. So, however, in both systems, we're submitting our privacy to a centralized entity, no matter it's a tech corp or a government. We're sacrificing the ownership and self-sovereignty of our personal life in exchange for accessing the government's or the company's services. So the more people compromise, the more govs or corps can manipulate over them. And I think this is the reason why Web3 decentralized identity are so necessary in this scenario. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other speakers want to share, if you were to pitch to someone who's like new to the concept of DID, like
Yeah,
why?
I think I can add up something here. I personally using Web2 identity a lot, almost every day, right? So we're using Google authentication, and we use LinkedIn, we use WeChat, Alipay to authenticate other applications. But one of the drawback we
Did we briefly lose Wenqing again?
I think so. I
guess
cannot
so.
hear him.
I thought James was gonna say something. You wanna comment?
Yeah, I can chime in.
Sure, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, just to piggyback on what was saying before, I think now with with DIDs and being able decentralized IDs, the user now has a voice, right? So as a previous host was saying about being able to own your own identity, I think there is this new world, right, where you can have, like as was mentioned before, your LinkedIn, your WeChat, your Alipay, your Google, but those attestations are not owned by the individual. So when we talk about self-sovereign identity, sovereignty means like, who has ownership of rights. So Google can track you, Twitter can track you. These platform providers have really allowed the internet to evolve and mature here. And they were like attestation providers, similar to real world attestation providers. Like if you, here in the United States, you go to DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they attest that they have claimed, who you are. And people can trust the government in terms of like, okay, attesting to who you are. Now, there are privacy concerns, control concerns, and with decentralized IDs, now the end user can now have a voice. So I think as we move forward with Web3 and we evolve, there's going to be this hybrid system now where users can have their own voice and they can say, okay, this is who I am, and they can claim who they are as well. And then I think with the other platform providers, Facebook, Twitter, etc., could also help attest to you to get a fuller or more rich picture of who you are. So to me, when you talk about decentralized identifiers, it just really empowers the user to give a voice to themselves, right? So I think there's this balance here between the individual claiming to say who they are and different ID providers to also augment that as well. And it just is, I think, now with this root cryptography, being able to have this self-assertion that empowers the user to allow them to have a voice. And it's this kind of blend or balance between the person attesting for themselves who they are and who they claim to be, along with other verification providers that allow this attestation, because you don't want to fully just give over the right and that claim to these platform providers, but also, you can be suspicious of users as well when they are just self-attesting to claim that, they've done X, Y, or Z. So it's a balance between the two, I believe. And now we have more of this symmetry as we move forward. So I think it's hand in hand. I don't know if there's going to be one that will take over the other, and it really is context dependent, depending on why you want to understand the identity of someone. But this, I think, is a huge step forward for the internet and people online, especially as we're coming out of COVID. We have a lot of people in these last few years living their lives online. And so now with these decentralized identifiers, users have a voice and being able to blend their real IRL identity with their representation online.
Yeah, absolutely. I think identity has so many different dimensions. And I saw like Lauren wants to chime in as well. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like James is starting to talk about kind of the importance of building up context and reputation around decentralized identifiers, which I think is a super interesting topic. And hopefully we get to talk about that more in this conversation. I wanted to also just hit on a point that he was making, I think like decentralized identifiers can sound kind of mystical. And I think some people have maybe the idea that it's just kind of another long, string, kind of like a wallet address. And so just to kind of clarify it a bit, maybe for some people that are newer to the space, you still have to basically create a decentralized identifier and link it to some other kind of identity or key pair, right? So in the blockchain space, a DID can be linked or controlled by a wallet address, which is one option. And one that I think a lot of projects are taking. It could be an ENS name. It could be many others. And what's exciting about the blockchain space is all those other platforms, as James was alluding to, are user controlled, right? You're not relying and having to trust a centralized authority to basically govern that kind of other identity system, that this is all kind of the bedrock, I guess, that you would say, of these decentralized identifiers. What's interesting and what we've done with Ceramic is there are also many different DID specs. So you can think about a decentralized identifier is really just like a data model, or like DIDs are really like a data model that define these decentralized identifiers. So you can have many different kinds of DIDs. They don't all look the same, and there's many different flavors. And so I think there's like dozens, if not hundreds, of different DID specs that you can find on W3C. There's like a long list of different specifications that people have come out with. And Ceramic has worked on a couple that are really interesting. And just to give some more flavor to it, one is called a 3ID DID. And there are only a handful of DID models that do this, where it actually allows you to link multiple different accounts and wallets to a single DID. And that's really interesting because now instead of having to fragment my different accounts across different decentralized identifiers, I can start to build up this holistic sense of digital self where I actually link multiple accounts that represent who I am and my ownership over those accounts to one kind of singular sense of self. And the other two that we've created that I think are really interesting is an NFT DID spec, which basically allows an NFT itself to be able to have like a quote unquote identity. And what that means on Ceramic is that it can actually write to a Ceramic stream and control its own data. So an NFT could actually update the metadata related to it. And as that NFT changes hands, the new owner of that NFT now has the authority to change that metadata and maybe add their name to an address book or a contact list that moves with the NFT. Or a safe DID is another DID method we've come up with that is basically allowing a Gnosis safe, which is a multi-signature wallet, to also likewise act as a decentralized identifier. So just to give some more kind of background on it, there's lots of different kind of flavors and variations, and they all serve different purposes based on your use case.
Wow. So yeah, I will just continue from what James and Lauren and then the other and the wiki have said. So like I think Lauren has given us a really comprehensive like definitions of like how DID works, and then I don't really want to like add anything else to that because like that's pretty comprehensive. But I do want to like add more my opinions onto the Web2 identity question. So like I think James has made a really strong opinion on this, so that finally we the users have our own voice instead of like being like controlled or manipulated by those like Web2 like centralized parties. So in Web2 like if you're you don't really have your own like identity or account. Like you are allowed to manage your account, but you don't really have the real ownership over that. Because like think about like when you're while you are registering to like some like Twitter or Facebook or other like Web2 platforms, you filling like a registration form with your like username and then password and then maybe some like your private information of yours, and then you submit this form to those like third party or centralized party, and then they will approve you to have your own like account instead of like you have the total rights or you have your total like control over that account. They can just delete your account or ban your account whenever they want, like due to the fact that you are actually agreeing with their like privacy like statement or privacy policies. So basically in Web2, you don't really have your or own your account. You're just like allowed to manage your account on those Web2 platforms. But in Web3, while we are talking about DIDs, we're talking about like owning our own identities. You can like since it's as simple as a like a wallet address or wallet private keys, you can generate your own private key however you want. Like it's just a number, although it's the range of it is from 0 to the 2 to the 256 minus 1, which is really large. But you can like generate that however you want, like and then which means that you are actually the owner of this like identity, because no one else can have your own like private key inside of yourself. So while we are talking about DIDs, we are really talking about ownerships. And finally, you can build up your own like reputation or credit score or something else like that, like with your own hands, because everything that's adding to your like identity is actually controlled by yourself. It cannot be erased or it cannot be altered by those third parties. Everything that's adding to your like reputation is actually secured by your private keys or aka your signatures instead of those like third party authentications. So yeah, I mean, I just want to add some more like of my opinion onto like Web2 and Web3 identities, and hope that can solve maybe answer the question properly.
Yeah. Thank you, Yisi, for the additional comments. Yeah. Wenqing, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry, my connection is not so
Yeah.
good.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Iris.
Oh, I would like to continue with Is Liu. For me, what Web3 and the crypto world intrigue me most is that everything is so dynamic and fluid. We are all part of this creation that lead us to no one knows where. It's kind of like the Mayflower taking all the pilgrim to America 400 years ago. Also, we are all exploring the boundaries between reality and metaverse. And above all, it's all experimental. For me, it's kind of like a global digital therapeutic experiment that slow on all of us. And I'm really looking forward to see how how our reactions and interactions would be. Let's say more and more countries are going to accept stablecoin, and maybe more countries to set Bitcoin as their fiat. And when it comes to DID, it certainly applies too, as we are discussing now. We are also creating and trimming part of its definition. I think I'm going to talk about the things that support DID, make DID more vividly. It's a common sense that our world operates on credit and credentials. That is a credit rating system, including car rentals, students' loans, and etc. And we want DeFi to compete with SEFI. We definitely need a solid and well-developed credit system. And when you interact on the blockchain, you show up only as one address. But with that, only provide very low dimensional data. And many applications and projects need to have a richer concept of your identity. So the credit system is crucial to both users and applications. Yeah, I hope.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the use cases of like having DID kind of on Web3 credit scoring and kind of building up your reputation.
Hey, sorry
that
guys,
with
trying to fix my net.
Yeah, we're rooting for you, Wenqing. Yeah, go ahead. Can you do you want to add more to this question on kind of why we need DIDs and the flaws of Web2 identity, or do you want to share, or we can move to the next question? Yeah, it feels like Wenqing's internet today has been a bit on and off. I hope he comes back and join us. I really want to delve a bit deep into, I think, what Laura and James briefly touched upon, kind of on the W3C's like recommendation, and there's so many kind of different schemes of DIDs, and just yesterday they announced kind of released the latest recommendation. So just want to get some of your reactions, like what do you think are the more kind of noteworthy part from this announcement. Like I think they mentioned on the DID URLs and other updates. I just want to get some of your reactions to the W3C's announcement.
I can chime in a little bit. What so it's very technical, and I won't bore everyone with this. So what I would like to say is that there are a lot of comments, and a lot of, if you take a look at the press release, if you take a look at the link and you scroll down to the bottom, and you can just see the number of different and the variety of different agencies and companies that are in support of this. I think it's really encouraging, and you know, this is from a identity perspective. I think the only other W3C recommendation was the URL. And so in a lot of ways, the way to think about this is that, you know, you have a URL to designate a website. And now we have this for individuals. So now we can actually have this kind of human interaction. And so that's really encouraging. And with any standard, it's going to take a group of people to adopt it. And so while you can read the technical specifications, what was really encouraging when I linked into the press release is scrolling to the bottom, just the different types of organizations that are, you know, blockchain, governments, different type of companies, startups, corporations that are all backing this. So I think this is a seminal moment here, and we're evolving. I think that, you know, the internet was meant to be, or structurally, peer-to-peer. And now we can evolve here and allow for this kind of human recognition of identity. And I think it's taken a couple of decades to get to this point, and we're just still at the beginning. But I really do think that this kind of takes and evolves the internet to the next step, and really empowering and recognizing individuals now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that actually segues very well into our topic today, being human in Web3, and maybe just beyond Web3, or just being human in the internet, kind of how the individuality and self-sovereignty are being more and more respected and technologically protected through DIDs and a lot of efforts. So on that note, yeah, we're seeing, like, you know, more of these like trends to represent users as humans rather than just one simple wallet address in Web3, and there's the kind of the proof of humanity, Bright ID, et cetera, and a lot of solutions they're working on here, like a lot of the projects are working with today. So I'm curious, like, what do you think are the best ways to prove humanity and validate identities that are owned by humans in Web3? Because, you know, especially given a lot of the really rampant kind of scam and kind of impersonation issues. What are some of the best practices you've seen so far in terms of building humanity into Web3?
Yeah, I can start here. This is something that we've been thinking a lot about and working with a couple of projects. The one I'll talk about first is Gitcoin and their proof of personhood passport. So we just went live with them on Gitcoin grants around 14 in June. So some people here might have even interacted with the new ceramic-based proof of personhood passport. And essentially, Gitcoin grants is all funded via quadratic funding. So in simple, the more votes that a specific project gets, the more dollar amounts that are actually driven to it. So the idea is that it's actually not just about people sending the highest dollar to a project, but it really shows interest of like the masses and meant to be a more democratic way of channeling funding. And obviously there's a lot of spam and bots, and it's really hard for them on the platform to actually match up to ensure that one vote is really by one maps to one human, and one human is only actually submitting one vote. So they've had this kind of proof of personhood passport and have just relaunched in a fully decentralized fashion on Ceramic. And what you do as a user is there's multiple different verifications that you can go through. And I think that's one thing that's really strong about kind of this proof of humanity type work is you usually don't want to just have one single kind of verification flow, because there might be ways to game that. So what they do is there's multiple different accounts, right? You can go in and verify a GitHub, your Twitter page, maybe it's a different social platform like Facebook, or even Google sign-on actually is another option as well. And what you do is you basically can go through multiple different flows based on the user and where you have accounts and what your preference is. And all of those different, each verification that you go through is basically used by the Gitcoin team in a specific algorithm that creates a weighted score that determines how likely it is that you're actually a person and not a robot. And so I think that that's really interesting because one, again, you give the user sovereignty, right, to choose which accounts they want to associate with themselves directly rather than forcing them to choose one and make it very binary. But it's also interesting because then different apps now are starting to use this proof of personhood kind of utility to also bring that into their application. So it's also a way to make it more sovereign and composable across applications. But it's also cool because different apps can now create their own scoring, right? Like one application might think that Facebook is a really valuable indicator of your proof of humanity, but other people might think that that's not, right? And they actually care a lot more about a Google account, or maybe there's another account that they view as 20 points and another app views as 5. So I think it's interesting to think about with proof of humanity, different apps will have different scores and weighting based on what they think is most valuable in their application. So I think Gitcoin has done a good job leading the way there, and very excited to see that kind of continue in grants around 15, and other apps continue to kind of use that proof of personhood passport in their applications as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the proof of personhood passport is a great way, especially within the Gitcoin ecosystem, to kind of connect different credentials and, like Lauren, what you said earlier, kind of building the context around like people's identities and like who they are. Yeah. Any other speakers want to comment on this? Kind of, and also you can talk about kind of from your project point of view, how do you how do you think about like kind of infusing the human layer into identities? Like how do you prove and validate identities?
Yes. Sorry. This is Anita from
Yeah.
KN3. Sorry, our
Yes.
co-founder Thomas' connection is not so good. So maybe please let me to share our comments about that, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And we think we need a decentralized DID because we can skip into these aspects like verifiable. If we want to have a trustless finance, a trustless debt ecosystem, we must have a verifiable identity and user data solution as a trustless fundamental, and also permissionless and given the data control back to users. A real DID should not be a centralized agency to decide whether someone can or cannot access to the profile, and instead, the decision power should be returned back to the user who generates the profile. And also, the interoperability, the ID should not be a one-way or closed-end data service. Instead, it should be a round-way protocol to connect users, other protocols, and loop back users again. So it requires high composability to facilitate the overall interoperability. So we think these kinds of components are very vital to the DID. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anita. Vicky, go ahead.
Yeah. So since I'm a history and the philosophy background, so maybe I'll explain my point of view, understanding of Bit and decentralized ID from a more humanity way. So kind of, everyone has the right to be recognized as a person before the law or before permission. However, like according to World Bank, nearly 1 billion people in the world have no form of legal ID, meaning people cannot prove who they are or access to government's welfare or services. So they cannot even able to open bank accounts. That's why poverty and hunger will be the consequences along with their life. As a result, universal, reliable, integrated, and secure identity for everyone is a determining factor to help these, vulnerable and discriminated groups. With the Web3 identity, especially what I mean is a unified cross-chain Web3 identity, people define who they are as they wish, and no more need to prove as a quote unquote legal or permissioned person by any entity, governments, or corp. So no more needs to submit their privacy or data. They can access DeFi services instead of traditional banking services. So in this way, they start to control their lives. That's why that's how I'm thinking of proof of humanity in a humanity way.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Vicky, from like kind of a humanities academic background interpretation on this. Yeah, I studied like government for my undergrad, so yeah, definitely, I think that's a sociological kind of angle to approach identities, and why this goes beyond just a technological disruption. It's something that we see kind of building a part of the broader kind of digital ecosystem, digital kind of state like narrative. Yeah. Anyone else wants to comment on this? If not, we will. Yeah, go ahead, James. And
Yeah, I'll just go first. Thanks, James. So yeah, a quick comment on this, because like I think basically to me, like especially to me, I don't really care about like if a like the ID is controlled by a human or anything else. I guess like what ceramics are and Gitcoin are doing with the Gitcoin passport, it's just you add more like points to your account to show that you have a higher like a possibility being a human. I guess what we are dealing with is actually a trade-off between how much like benefit you can gain versus like the possibility of being a human. Because like if we can control if we can balance this trade-off properly, we don't really care about if you're like human or a computer or a robot behind this like identity. So I guess what we are trying to build here is to have more ways or provide more ways for the different like developers or protocols or even like projects to have so that they can have a better like infrastructure to see or to define if there's like some specific identity or address or a whatever you want it, like a public key, anything that can be like regarded as a decentralized identity, like to be a human or to match their criteria. So I guess like what we are trying to do here is to add more like signals or data points so that they can use. So that's basically I guess like what I want to add to this like question. So yeah, James, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate all the kind of different dimensions here that DIDs open up. Another one that I wanted to just briefly mention, and this is like another rabbit hole that we can go down, because having these decentralized IDs are so fundamental and so foundational, and we can save this for another time to talk about, but just want to allow and let people in the audience know about verifiable credentials. And so now, if you own your own identity, you as a user get to now accumulate or be able to control and curate your reputation through these verifiable credentials. And I think that it's hard to separate sometimes identity from reputation. But that's the impact that we're talking about. So from a technical perspective, decentralized IDs are these like anchors or these foundational concepts that lead to being able for users to be self-empowered and kind of curate and decide how they want to present themselves online through verifiable credentials. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. It's a very deep topic and it's fundamental. I think that a lot of people can understand and embrace DIDs, and they understand that because we have this like real world IRL counterpart when it comes to identity. But identity could also be conceptualized from small to large groups, and because it's online and because it's digital, we can now identify and group many different things that we have not really even thought about before. So there's this whole space that I think is going to evolve that I don't think any one of us knows what this future holds. But it's fundamental, and I think it's extremely powerful. And it's these type of Twitter Spaces and conversations that will allow us to imagine new forms of individual identity and group identity, computer-based identity, and how we form or coordinate online.
Yeah, thank you, James. That's very well said. And I think that actually segues very well into my kind of follow-up question. And I think a lot of speakers have touched upon this. It is a rabbit hole around identities, credentials, and reputations. And specifically, I think that covers actually a wide array of use cases. Lauren talked about kind of for the Gitcoin, the bounty participants, like how they use kind of the proof of personhood. Passport is one use case. I just want to hear more, like what are some of the use cases that your project is currently building around kind of DID, and it's like a wider application, and what are some of the use cases that you're personally really excited to explore? Anyone wants to start first?
Yes. Yeah. We Can3. So we want to build Can3 as a permissionless Web3 relational protocol that not only every devs can access to it, but everyone can create their own type of relationships according to users' Web3 behaviors. So it is a creation system that we can collectively build up on-chain interoperability across applications and protocols. And currently we have done some integrations like social apps with Mask Network. We have already assisted devs in vibrant substances like providing virtual credential services for Quest3. Virtual credential services is a fundamental framework for constructing Quest3 on-chain Quest system to validate whether a Web3 user is eligible to complete a certain task, and also solutions with social graph for MetaMail and Showroom. We provide a trustless analytic environments of user recommendation algorithms based on blockchains, live data to encourage users to connect more friends with just one click, and also AI-friendly solution for algorithm registry with Can3 networks, easy to use graph database and open algorithms. And also to establish an open platform that allows users to choose algorithms independently and even submit their own algorithms. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anita, for sharing the use cases that we've seen from the KN3's point of view. Any other speakers wants to share? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I can go like next. So I'm gonna talk about like briefly what NextID thinks about this question. So we are building is that we allow users to create and then create an avatar or a persona, whatever you want to call it, which is just a like elliptic curve, like private key and public key pair, and then use this like universal like ID or DID to control your connections. Basically, you can use this like private key and this key pair to connect with your like Web3 addresses like Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, and in any other like blockchain addresses by like double signatures from like bidirectional signatures from both sides. And then you can also like verify your like Web2 account with like a signature by your like avatar, and also post a proof post to verify that you have the ownership over that Web2 account. So by creating such a like connection of like identities or aggregation of identities, we allow users to control how they want to represent on the internet, just like what like Jem has said. Like now you have the total rights or total like control over your like identities so that so then you are able to build your own reputation with your own choice. You can connect any account you have on this like avatar to build it as a more comprehensive one. And then you can and anything that's connected to this avatar, like your like one of your Ethereum address or one of your like social media accounts, and anything that's happening there will be added to your own reputation over this avatar. So the reason why we're doing this is that we want to give the rights back to the users so that they are all so that they can feel that they are the owner of their own identities instead of like still being manipulated by those Web2 platforms. And then by doing this, like anyone, sorry, we also like tell our users that by like connecting all your like different identities here on NextID, everything here will be public unless you want them to be encrypted or unless you want them to be like private. Like the reason by encryption, we're since we are using like private key and public key pair, we can just natively do that by with users private key, so they can have their like identities connected to this avatar both publicly and privately. So whenever they need to like authorize with some like services, like someone if someone has built a like Degen score, and they can just grant the access of their one of their like private connections or private identities to those like platforms. So we're kind of like providing a really fundamental infrastructure of like how users are connecting their like identities, so that to like minimize the effort the other developers or other projects need when they want to build something upon users identities and the interactions and the activities over those identities. So yeah, that's I don't really yeah I don't really want to go really deep into this. So that's briefly what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I
Okay.
want to say I'm totally agree with Yisi, and I think the idea is not just a profile aggregation service, and it meaning is way more profound than that. So the more account identity we can consolidate into one person or a vendor, the more user behavior and social relationships generating among different platforms can be put together to facilitate one depth. And this is what we are doing, what K3 Network has been doing along with NextID and Bit and other DID solutions by aggregating EVM or non-EVM account and Web2 account like Twitter in one vendor. And we will have plenty of existing social relationships to facilitate one vendor identity. This will become a very useful on-chain social and credit application fundamental. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Anita. And right, I think also like for the speakers and projects present here, we are actually at different kind of positions and play different parts in the DID and social ecosystem. Like NextID is more kind of really back-end protocol, and then we have the protocol like kind of social graph protocols like KN3 on top, and then like applications like Collab.land that we're hoping to also work together in the future to develop like additional like new use cases. Yeah, and I know because like James, you have a hard stop in 5 minutes. Just want to quickly, like segue into our like kind of next question, or just overall focused on kind of like like your roadmap and how that aligns with DID. Maybe James, you can share with us a little bit on Collab.land. A lot of us have used it.
Yeah, thank you, and I thank you for that. So yeah, the way that we're thinking about DIDs is that every single user that comes into Collab.land, because we have a lot of users, especially mainstream users, that are interested predominantly in NFTs. And so they'll figure things out in terms of like, what is this crypto? What is this NFT community? And I think the unlock for us at Collab.land is the understanding that at the community level, there's an incentive, whether you're a DAO, whether you're DeFi, whether you're NFTs, to be able to contextualize the importance of digital asset ownership that leads to digital identity. And for us at Collab.land, what we want to do is facilitate that. So now that we've had about a few years of DAOs and coming up on mainstreaming of NFTs, we see that people are not just starting these communities from scratch. So, you may not be a Bored Ape member now because you've sold that asset, but you can have this attestation through like Collab.land saying, I was there at the very beginning and I helped that community grow for the first 6 months. And rooted in decentralized IDs and using verifiable credentials, we can attest to that Discord username being in one of the early channels of Bored Ape, for example. And as we move forward, we can actually use these DIDs and verifiable credentials to gate, just like we're gating with tokens. And the reason why we're so bullish on this is that this is the beginning of your reputation. You get to, as a user, selectively disclose what you've been a part of, what groups that you've joined. And as verifiable credentials and DIDs go across different platforms, we can attest to, let's say, in the future, for example, you've participated in a group and your pull request on GitHub was merged in, and you can have a verifiable credential. Now, you can store these, and it's hard to understand when you're doing something, the impact that it will have in the future, right? So early members of a Bored Ape, they didn't know at the beginning like where this was going to go. Or if you are an open source contributor on GitHub and you merged your pull request was merged in, you don't know how much impact that's going to have in the future. You can hold these verifiable credentials that are rooted in your decentralized IDs, and you can prove later on. Maybe there's some of these VCs that that didn't really go anywhere, but the ones that have, you can pin or you can associate with your decentralized IDs so that you can prove that you were there. And so you're leaving these breadcrumbs, and we're doing it right now on the internet, wherever we go. But now with the IDs and with verifiable credentials, you can now collect them and amass them, and then create your own kind of persona, so that if you're wanting to start a new NFT project, you show verifiably that you were in an early group at Bored Ape, for example. And that shouldn't start you at like level 1 in this new NFT project. That might start you at level 6 or 7, whatever it may be. And so now this is how we are building up this reputation. It's really this event log of what you're doing on the internet that the user gets to easily group. And I think what's really exciting is that this is, and reminds me of the beginnings of social, right? Starting on Friendster, and then MySpace, and then ultimately on Facebook. And Facebook is predominant winner here when it comes to identification. So I think that, we didn't know, and we didn't have the context to understand what we were doing and what we started 15, 20 years ago when it came to being online that turned into social media. But now we have this understanding and know that what happens when users don't own the platform, but with DIDs now they own their own identity, and we can do better this time. So I'm very hopeful and very bullish on this. And so, yeah, I appreciate the time, and thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, thank you, James. That was very well put. And I think that kind of reminds us like why, like in terms of like DID and compared to the right now, the Web3 identifiers, which is more of a kind of a singular wallet address, like there's like really multi-dimensional, like DIDs can really be multi-dimensional, and as a container, kind of the beginning of social. I think that's a really well said way of highlighting like why this is such an exciting vertical to be building around. Yeah. And would love to hear from other speakers in terms of like, for your project right now, how are you building towards kind of like the decentralized ID, and how does your roadmap right now like align with like DIDs in general?
So maybe I can touch a little bit about our recent roadmap and elaborate a little bit about Dobbit. So we just released the SEP account feature recently. Dobbit finished testing and fully ready to underline the contract level capabilities. This is one of the most important features that we are developing. SEP account is a very innovative function we introduced. So every SEP account is independent to its main account and has all the features the main account has, such as the data ownership, the decentralized personal portal, and so on. But the main account can set the price for its sub accounts, and this means the main accounts can distribute sub accounts and set the price for them. From this, it will gain the revenue of selling the sub accounts to its own treasury. So it will be a perfect fundraising method to, for influencers, for stars, for creator economy, and of course for a lot of DAOs. So that's why we then come up with a very mind-blowing idea called Name DAO. We're going to release the detailed info and instructions about Name DAO this Friday. Maybe I can touch a little bit of the idea here, today. So we've been very interested and enthusiastic about DAOs. The first reason is, of course, we do believe DAO will be the future model for human organizations. But also we believe that Dobbit, or say identity itself, belong to a public property categories. So we should let it belong to the community, where it can be directly managed by community members instead of controlled by a team, or some specific persons. So we also believe that besides English speakers, people in other language or cultural district are often in a more urgent situation in need of the Web3 identity solutions. So Dobbit wants to encourage people to use different languages, into Web3. And based on this idea, we use character sets as a possible DAO categories to give back the government's the government's rights and the revenues to people who do belongs to this language or cultural district. And at the same time, we found many DAOs struggled with the native token governance, since the native tokens are tradable and transferable, but they still keep a governance function. That's kind of unreasonable. So by using the features of Dobbit accounts and SEP account systems, we would like to promote name DAOs, as a bold experiment. With Dobbit account function, one identity equals one vote, and it helps to build a healthy finance system for DAOs, solve the liquidity problems in DAO treasuries. And besides the native tokens, so there will be maybe USDC, ETH, BTCs in these DAO treasuries as well. In this way, we would like to, further promote people in different language or cultural district to adopt Web3 technology and to embrace decentralized identity. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky, for sharing the roadmap about Dotbit. It's really exciting to kind of see the continue, like it's getting more and more sophisticated in terms of the kind of building around more context around each Dotbit holder. Yeah. Any other projects would like to share? Yeah. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk a little bit about, I guess, where we are right now from a ceramic perspective. We're actually moving over to adopted PKH as a standard, and that's because it's going to allow our ceramic and all of our users to be compatible with the sign-in with Ethereum spec, so that it will be really easy for users to authenticate into any ceramic-based apps where you kind of just sign in with a wallet the way that you see on a lot of dApps today. And we're working with a bunch of other wallets and projects in the ecosystem today to create a sign-in with X namespace so that you can create a similar login and really seamless user onboarding experience across a bunch of other chains moving forward. So that's like just kind of one thing high level in terms of our roadmap and where we're moving. I'll go back to maybe some of the use cases that I was mentioning before when I was starting to talk about NFT DID and safety ID. Maybe going back to safety ID, like, I think the why DIDs are important is not only just having a framework, but it's really about authentication into an application, right? And how do I show who I am as a user and provide that I'm kind of the controller, or that this information is owned by me as a user. And DIDs allow you to kind of port that with you from ecosystem to ecosystem. And so I think what's interesting on Ceramic is I mentioned all data is controlled by the user, right? And so that means that it's actually controlled and you authenticate into Ceramic as an user through a DID. And so if you think about something like a DAO org charter, for example, that wants to explain who are we, why do we exist, what's our raison d'etre, you don't just want one person to author that, right? That's a lot of the problems that we're seeing today in these open decentralized communities, is that we're still relying on a lot of these Web2 platforms like Notion or Google Docs, and a lot of places where there's maybe only one person that actually has sole control over how you talk about your organization on a GitHub repo or something like that. And so I think what's really cool about something like Safety ID is you can actually start to have better mechanisms to actually coordinate, and having multiple people kind of agree and coordinate around content and data related to an organization. So we've been working with Radical, for example, which is kind of like the decentralized GitHub, to create these kind of org profiles where you have a Gnosis Safe, a Safety ID, which is a multi-sig, to be able to create basically what you would think of as the GitHub, a GitHub repo about me, about an organization that's controlled by multiple signatures. So in order for you to kind of change any of that data or write to it, you would need, X of N number of signatures. So it's not just one person who can go in and kind of decide whatever it is that they want that to look like. So I think that's a really interesting use case, and I think starts to move us into a direction where we have better just kind of security and coordination mechanisms in these decentralized contexts. And then maybe going back to NFT DID, I talked a little bit about updating metadata before, but something else that's interesting is the actual kind of art itself of an NFT. Right now, we're starting to see a lot more of these kind of generative art experiments, which I think is really interesting. And with Ceramic, because the NFT DID can control the art itself, we can start to have these really cool kind of, again, built-in permissions and controls where, as the NFT is actually bought and traded to different people, the new owner of that NFT is the controller of this NFT DID, and they're able to now update the contents of the NFT over time. So they can actually change the art itself as their new owner and add their own flavor to it. Or you could actually have the original creator, the artist itself, be the owner of the NFT DID, and they can actually change the art over time as it gets traded and shared around to other people. So I think those are some really interesting kind of maybe more novel DID methods that create some really interesting real world use cases that I think are exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially with the art the kind of the art regenerative art NFT DID, it's quite interesting that kind of, even though it still is called an identifier, it can be kind of transfer from person to person, and kind of with each transaction there's a new iteration of it. Yeah, so I think definitely that's a really interesting, like you said, kind of a novel field of DID, and it kind of goes beyond kind of identities, a kind of a unique personal identifier, but it goes something beyond that. Yeah. Anyone else wants to share your projects roadmap around DIDs and other related fields?
Yes. Yeah, and as I just mentioned before, we have assist so many dApps in vibrant systems, and we are literally open to all the social dApps. and Web3 analytics-driven products. Like we are especially interested in DIDs, social graphs, credit-driven based applications, and Can3 network as a Web3 data infrastructure. We try to pave the way for the Web3 application and protocol developers. Today in Can3, you can just get high performance relational data from live blockchains, and you don't need to spend months to integrate APIs. Dealing with data indexation ETLs with Can3 alone, you can get the finest social data to build your campaign tools and the credit system or social algorithm based applications. And as a permissionless relationship aggregator, Can3 is integrating DID protocols like I mentioned before, just NextID and .bit, and we are together exploring more use case by helping them expanding territory from identity to relationships. Some more real identities we plot together, some more relational user behaviors we can be leveraged in real use case, such as credit reputation system and marketing campaign tools, and so on. And we are considering to support some research-driven and data modeling specialized DAO organizations to focus on sustainability, building useful reputation scoring based on-chain model to facilitate memberships, reputation program, and marketing campaign scenarios. And yes, and anyway, we are trying to explore some novel practices to empower Web3 community, build up some more sophisticated algorithm-driven use case. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Anita, for sharing. And we're certainly, like really excited to bring more of the off-chain identity data and identity graph to the KN3 database and kind of combined together overall, making our overall database and intelligence more powerful. Anyone else wants to share on this topic in terms of like a roadmap? Yeah, and path forward.
Thank you for the question. Vitalik once said that the most important problem to solve in crypto is to build more wallets. And Unipass, our role is similar to the role of email on the internet. We aim to pave the way for traditional Web2 users to enter Web3 and lower the threshold. But at this stage, the barrier for the use of blockchain application is very high, simply because many details have not been hidden deep down underneath, and users need to be responsible for understanding all those crypto terminologies and technology behind them. The most typical example is that the process of creating a crypto wallet. As a matter of fact, it's easy for common Web2 user to manage the common password for 2 or 3 accounts. But when it comes to blockchain application, in addition to password, there are also mnemonics that cannot be remembered, screenshot, or pasted. And when you switch to different chains and wallets, you have to install every single app, buy gas, etc. all over again. Instead of enjoying the interest part of the blockchain, people easily got blocked out. But with Unipass ID, you don't need to experience all those fusses. According to the first principles, we think the best account for users is the one that they are already using, which is emailbot. Unipass enables them to use email as their encrypted account and unifies login experience for Web 2 and Web 3 for the first time. The difference here is that other accounts belong to their respective platform, while the Unipass accounts belong only to you. You can log into the Web3 application with Unipass and you own the accounts entirely. We hope Unipass can integrate the private key and the mnemonics and hide them underneath. The concept that users should not be bothered should be hidden, and let them enter the Web3 world without changing their habits. Only in this way we can attract more users. And there is a particular good scenario for this is this GameFi project we are currently cooperating with called The Hero. We're not only helping them with their account generation, but also lower the threshold for their new users, as many new users only have game token and no native token, while GameFi providers are willing to cover users' transaction fees, or they can reclaim game token from user later. This process really helps smooth the entry and optimize user experience. And we have more products to release in the following months. Feel free to follow us for more interesting updates. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Iris, and definitely want to probably at the end of our conversation go back to in terms of the DID's impact with and users and onboarding people to use DIDs. And just very quickly on this, I think a lot of speakers have already mentioned, since we're building Web3 protocols and projects, a lot of these efforts are collaborative. And we're all like building kind of different components in the Web3 social and identity space to push the entire industry forward. So I just want to, ask you guys, like, what are some of the potential protocols and dApps from your project's point of view that you want to collab with, that you think can overall like unleash, like even more potential for Web3 social?
Well, maybe I can start first, and then yeah. So, well, it's a really good question. First, it reminds me of our like frequently a lot of conversations and discussions about SBT and decentralized society. I think this is the direction like we're most interested in. Vitalik wrote an article weeks ago about decentralized society and SBT. He talks about how the transferable and tradable tokens are not a proper choice for building up a social relationship of trust. Instead of SBT or we say soulbound token are the possible ultimate methods to encode trust networks for economy, for reputations, and governance in Web3 society. So we think the combination of SBTs and decentralized identity along with DAOs will be the best way to create a trust mechanism in the trustless Web3 society. So yeah, that's the case. The use case or the most innovative scenarios we're most interested. We're very enthusiastic about. So if there's any projects or audiences, listeners who are interested in building a SBT system or interested in this direction, in this track, you can definitely come to me. We can have a discussion later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky. Definitely interested in chatting more on that. Any other speaker want to talk about, like potential protocols and dApps that your project is excited to partner with right now?
Hello. Thank you for the question. For me, it's a Lens protocol. They are creating a new social graph. The project looks very inviting and promising. I believe with their AAV background and resources, it will invite more Web2 users. Still, there are many content creators are not crypto natives. And if we collaborate with Lens team, we are confident to smooth and optimize their user onboarding experience. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Lens, yeah, they will probably join us for the next Twitter space. Yeah, we are, yeah, like they're a good friend of NextID, so definitely excited to build all together. Yisi, do you want to say something?
Yeah, as you just mentioned, we're eager to like collaborate with like other speakers, like projects like Ceramic, Dabit, like Collab.land, and so like also like K93. Well, we already have like collaborations. So yeah, basically, I guess like NextID is as simple as a really lightweight protocol that we want to like collaborate, or we're able to integrate with all the other like DID solutions. We're not like building another like ceramic. We're not building another like Canon 3 or and stuff. We're just building some like aggregator. Well, for now, we're just like building a kind of like aggregator that we can integrate everything together, so to build a more comprehensive and more complete like social graph, so that other developers can use. So for example, as I just mentioned, that our we're pretty much relying on the verifiable credentials at this point, which means that we're now like building our we're now building the reputation or trust of our NextID. We don't really want our users to trust us. Instead, like in our mechanism, we're like asking users to, when they're like connecting their identities, they need to like sign those like connections or sign in a bidirectional like ways to prove they have the ownership over both like identities, where all the identities they are connecting together. So all the proofs will be the thing that can be publicly verified by anyone else who is interested or who doesn't trust the result or the state we are presenting in our like front end, which means the we're moving the trust of like a third party entity towards math. You don't really need to trust us, you just need to trust math. So we're like right now we're just storing all the verifiable credentials or all the proofs on our like centralized server plus Arviv. But we are eager to store all these like proofs onto different decentralized or centralized storage solutions, including ceramics. Like we can definitely just store those proof chains that we are building in our NextID onto ceramics as another like backup or as another solution, so that users can query from different places. And also we are also eager to like cooperate with like Unipass, like since like Unipass is building a really novel way to manage your identity, since like they're building on top of CKB. In case you guys don't really know about CKB, it's called like the name is called like an Nermos network, and like in Unipass, that you can actually sign in with an email address natively, thanks to Nervous Network. So I guess it's a new and a better way to accommodate more like Web2 users onto this like DID space. So I guess since we like NextID is also able to like allow users to connect their avatar with like email addresses, I guess we can definitely just find a way to like connect with each other. And also I guess like we already have like some cooperations with other like projects like Canon 3 and then .bit, and also we're also like seeking collaborations with like Collab.land, but I guess James has just left. We will cover this up once we have some agreements later. So yeah, I mean, I'm basically just like summarizing our plans. So you guys are able to know a tentative roadmap of our like NXID development.
Right, right. And just a disclaimer. So, well, NextID is open source, so all the collaborations is permissionless. But I think really today, when we are having this discussion, hopefully more down the road, is to together figure out like kind of really co-designing like solutions and exploring use cases, combining identities, credentials, and like various kind of vertical related applications like in art, gaming, finance, etc. Yeah. So yeah, we've been doing this for like over almost like 90 minutes. So I just want to like wrap up with one last question to get our speakers thoughts on what kind of developments in the identity space do you foresee in upcoming months, and really as a lot of the end users, like general users today, like how do we like participate in kind of in adopting DIDs? Who would like to start? So yeah, just to be clear, the question is kind of where do you see the identity space going in the next few months to years, and for especially for onboarding like more general users to adopt DIDs, how do you see that play out?
Yeah, maybe I can share some opinions first. Yes. I think first of all, Q3 like the DIDs and DIDs should regard Q3 network as a good pipeline to extend user identities to their connections, and a sophisticated network make Web3 so powerful. So we have collaborated with NextID, Bit, and after learning from this talk, I think Collab.land, Ceramic, and Unipass are someone we should talk to, right? So I believe there are something we can work together, and also Q3 as an effective on-chain connectivity tool. We are open to any Web3 protocols and dApps together to build some awesome use cases with on-chain interoperability. And currently, we are barely see some algorithm-intensive use case, and we are still on the early stage of the credit and reputation program for Web3 campaign and SocialFi. So there are really a lot of things we need to build together. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anita. Any other speaker would love to share your thoughts on this? And if not, if the audience has any questions, we'll take maybe one or two questions today. Yeah, it's getting pretty late for the Asian time zones, and I'm sure like Lauren has a busy day to start.
From my humble perspective, that the credit system of the ID will definitely build up in the following months to years. And also, I would like to share this quote I read recently from a book called The Sovereign Individual. It said that we believe that change as dramatic as that of 500 years ago will happen again. The information revolution will destroy the monopoly of power of the nation state as surely as the gunpowder revolution destroyed the church's monopoly. And I believe DID is a pioneer of that ongoing revolution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anita. Oh, thank you, Iris. Sorry. And I think today, surprisingly, I think we talked a lot more on the kind of the sociological and political side of things around DIDs, besides it as a technological solution. Dean, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, I guess the use cases that most of the speakers have in mind implicitly from their description of their roadmaps and their plans are really in the Web3 space, in in gaming and the metaverse kind of thing. In our case here, I'm working on voting systems, and little group that's I'm working with, some academics and some other people, public personalities. We anticipate that something like this digital decentralized identity is going to become key to making something like that work. And however, it's very complex, and it's huge, complex scenario with three big parts. One, first, the voters have to become qualified and registered, right? There's a registration process where you get your voter's ID or whatever the central authority, the government, which Web3 seeks to overthrow, at least from most of our lives. Um, Unfortunately, is you need to become qualified by that entity in order to become
Yep.
a certified voter. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't lose you there. Anyway, aside from registration, the second thing after registration then would be the tallying. I'm sorry, the voting, the actual casting of your vote. That's a whole other process that requires a very different set of considerations. And then finally, the tallying of the results of an election. Right? So anyway, the that situation does deserve a lot of talk and discussion. But I've gotten enough here. Especially the
Mm-hmm.
announcement of the worldwide web consortium that they have a recommendation. I guess it's up to 1.2 now today. Actually, quite an auspicious
Yeah.
coincidence. Yeah, auspicious coincidence that they've announced that. But I'm very hopeful that a lot of progress will be achieved in the next few years, enough to where we can develop an identification system for individuals that can be submitted to the central authority. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna throw in the word zero knowledge proof without diving
Yeah.
into that
Thank
rabbit
you,
hole.
Dean.
But there should be ways to. I mean, you have to deal with the government, right? That they're the guys that
For
are
sure.
gonna decide. Hey, you're 18 years old, you can vote. That simple thing. So that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
problems with this particular use case. You can't. It's not like anybody. Not like in the web, right? We don't care who it is. He just pops into the site, and then he's got his identity, and then he goes in. We don't care who he is, whether he's qualified to be there or not. Whereas in this
Right.
case, it's very different. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I think you get my drift. It's it's kind of a rabbit hole that's quite deep. I've been in it for several years, thinking about the different things. Now, of course, with blockchain, I've come to the conclusion, and I guess even worldwide, the W3C consortium also thinks that that's where at least a part of the solution to something like this would be.
For sure.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's all. I just wanted to throw that
Yeah,
in.
thank you, Dean,
All right.
for the comment. And I think yeah, like it may take a few more years for like DIDs to like integrate with voting, but maybe like sooner than that. We'll see. But certainly, I think that's where more like IRL use cases will intersect with what we see today as like more like Web3 native. Yeah. Um, all right. Like our last question will go to Eris. Eris Akabi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We are a NFT protocol product or the app just publishing some novels or comics.
Hi,
So for us,
congratulations on your beautiful project. Because
sparkling protocol name.
it was thrown into the context of any admin.
Hold on. Sorry. Yeah. Eris, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I go ahead or
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. There's a mix up in the speaker. Yeah.
okay. So so in our situation, it's a very serious problem that maybe someone will publish illegal copy, and so we want to our customer could identify the real owner of this like novels or comics. So we want to display the ID of the publisher, but when someone using the wallet to publish novels or comics, we couldn't display their wallet address, because it is so can't identifiable for our customer, and we also couldn't use ENS address because maybe someone like Bill Gates .ens ETH or some other people's Web2 users ENS identification will maybe registered by some evil guys. So we think maybe Next.ID is a very useful application for some DApp like us. Maybe we can get like Twitter ID or Facebook ID from the DID. When we use DID, our customer can just click the button and see whether this ID is related to some Twitter or Facebook. So they can identify their creator, so they will not cheated by some evil guys. So that's my yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you, Eric. Do you have a specific question you want to ask for our speakers, or is this more of a comment?
No, I just want this function.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
okay, got it. Yeah, go ahead.
we actually got some comments on this actually. So I guess this is something that has been talked about like earlier by Laura from ceramics, since like there, and then we also did a really brief discussion over this because like you can never prove that like what's behind a address or what's behind a like an identity is a machine or a human. We can only know that they had like a some like probability of like how high the probability it is to be a human. So we don't really want to like deterministically like prove that some address or some like identity is a real human or not. We're just providing some like a real, a really fundamental infrastructure. We are providing some like some information about this address and using the like verifiable credentials so that everybody can verify. By the way, we provide all these information for developers or for the projects or for anyone to as a reference so that they can decide or they can make the judgment on whether it is matching their criteria for doing something. They can, for example, the easiest way or the easiest one to think about is that if the if it is controlled by human or not, or you can say that if this guy is like has a like a bachelor or a master degree or not. As like Dian just said, we can definitely just use ZK knowledge proof to do so. So I guess like when we're talking about DID, we're talking about like a combination of like different techniques, and then it's better if we can take a better advantage of all of these like techniques to build a better future. And yeah, that's that's my comment. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Yisi, for the response, and Eris for sharing a very peculiar use case from your end as a project builder in the kind of the content space. All right, yeah. So I think we've been doing this for a while, and today it's been really fruitful hearing from a lot of the different builders in the DID space and the social space together on like kind of like elaborating more on why we need DIDs, some of the use cases, and different possible ways to collaborate among each other and maybe beyond. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming. And in terms of NextID, we just announced our kind of moving into the beta testing phase last week, and we're really very open to collaborate with developers, projects on exploring how we can build the infrastructure and build a more thriving Web3 native social moving forward. Yeah, so thank you all, and we'll love to hear from you all in our future Twitter Space events.
Thank you, Hehe, for inviting David
Yeah,
and
thanks
me.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
thanks
you.
everyone. Well, have a good day and enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye bye.
you,
Yeah, thank
GM.
you.
GM.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.